miss, long or short. Precisely, Johnny exclaimed. They have a great feel for distance. It amazes me to this day. He continued, you know what I have noticed in
Hello there,
putting through
and
the
welcome
years?
to the tournament.
All
Second
good
round
putters
about
have
to
great
kick off
distance
here,
control.
so let's get down to the tee.
There are two variables in putting, distance and direction. Most people over-focus on direction and underfeel distance while putting. In washers, distance is paramount. You don't have to read the break, and most people can pitch fairly
Can't hit
straight.
all the fairways.
So the game becomes one of distance control. That's why it's a great game for putting improvement. Johnny motioned for me to watch Jake's technique. He was about to pitch from 30 feet. Where are his eyes focused? What part of his body moves? Is his pitching motion a straight line or circular like a golf swing? Johnny quizzed. Jake faced the target with both eyes looking at the cup. His arm hung freely at his side. The pitching motion was a straight back and straight through with no manipulation needed to produce this perfect pendulum movement from his shoulder joint. His body remained perfectly still, as if chiseled in marble. He is looking at the hole with both eyes. His arm is the only thing that moves, and because he is face on to the target, his arm is free to swing in a straight line, I responded. Johnny picked up a stick that was about 4 feet long. He gripped the stick near the top with his left hand, placing his left thumb on the top of the stick.
The fairway now.
He placed his right hand down the stick about 2 feet, holding the stick between his thumb and index finger. He moved the bottom of the stick just outside his right foot, so that his right arm hung freely from his shoulder joint. He anchored his left arm against his chest with his left hand placed just in front of his right shoulder joint, so that the stick was perfectly perpendicular to the ground. He stood naturally, looking with both eyes at the cup. He then moved his right arm in the exact motion the cowboys were using to pitch washers. The stick swung straight back and straight through effortlessly. If a person had never seen anyone putt, and you taught them to putt this way, do you think it would work? Johnny asked as he swung the stick back and forth as though he were putting. Before I could answer, he said, "You're about to witness one of the great experiments in golf. None of these guys had held a golf club before I built the links a few years ago. I'd played washers with him for several years. Pitching washers with these guys gave me an idea for a new putting technique that is superior to any other I have studied. You are about to see what putting looks like with binocular vision. One moving joint, and a perfect pendulum motion that moves freely in a straight line from an uninhibited shoulder joint." The washer game ended after 3 rounds, with ATM collecting all the money. The Cowboys looked at Johnny to see if he was ready to head to the course. Johnny responded, "Let's reload our guns with cash and head to the links." With this, each man approached ATM, who served as a human cash register, handing out dollar bills from his winnings in exchange for 20s. On the way to the links, Johnny made a profound statement. "I respect tradition, but I have a passion for truth." He paused to let me reflect, and then continued. "The purpose of golf is to get the ball in the hole in the least amount of strokes possible.
Well, there's nothing like
As long as you
starting your
use
round
conforming
under
equipment,
par.
it doesn't
And
matter what
one
the
under
stroke
for
looks
the
like.
tournament.
In each generation, there are
Okay, here
innovators
we
who
go.
rise up and challenge tradition. Take golf equipment, for example. Innovators have had a lasting impact in our generation with new materials such as titanium and designs such as the expanded sweet spot. Long-standing techniques have also been challenged in recent years, especially in putting. The long putter and the belly putter have emerged along with the claw grip, split grip, and left-hand low. Johnny took a right off the highway onto the one-lane road leading to the links.
Well, I guess you
He
can't
looked
hit
at
all
me
the
with a
fairways.
twinkle in his eyes, and he said, "You are about to witness the future of putting. I call it face-on putting." These cowboys started with a blank slate. On that slate, I taught them to putt looking at the hole with binocular vision while using their familiar washer pitching motion. From a physics standpoint, they have had several advantages over tradition. Binocular vision allows a truer picture of the target and line. They have one moving joint instead of 2. They use the shoulder joint in such a way that it swings the club in a straight line like a pendulum with absolute freedom. Unlike traditional putting, the putter is anchored at the top, And finally, their field is focused in one hand instead of two.
Now that was a swing.
Can you imagine Monet painting with two hands on the brush? My imagination was piqued. Johnny pulled into the parking lot and turned off the engine. He glanced at me before opening his door. If you think those guys were good at washers, you haven't seen anything yet. I'm telling you ahead of time, hang on to your money. The Cowboys headed to the practice green. All of them owned the same style, unusual-looking long putter. Not a traditional putter in the group. Not a golf shoe in the bunch either, just cowboy boots. They tossed their balls on the green and began to talk trash while putting in the manner Johnny had described. I had never seen anything like it. I had never let my imagination run wild enough to try something this unorthodox. Tradition has a vice grip on most people in general, and golf is a game
All
where
right, 34
tradition
feet
is
to the
sacred.
hole.
I was beginning to realize that it had a grip on me as well. It would take a player of monumental courage and confidence to break ranks this dramatically. Yet these guys knew no difference. To them, they were setting tradition, and common sense ruled. I reached in my bag for my putter, forgetting that I had broken it at the tournament on Sunday. Johnny said that there were some putters for sale inside the pro shop that I could borrow. Entering the small shop, I saw both traditional putters and custom-made face-on putters that Johnny had helped design. This was the putter each of the Cowboys were using. I hesitated just for a moment, but decided since there was money on the line, I would stick with a traditional short putter. I headed out to the green to warm up. It was the first time in my life where my traditional side-on style
Okay,
was
let's see what you
completely
can
out
do
of
with
place.
this 7-footer.
The Cowboys just smiled because in their hearts they knew that their common-sense face-on style would hold up against my experience. They also knew that they could play upon my self-consciousness. I caught myself watching with intrigue. These guys were good. I mean,
Nice putt, we're in the
really
hole. Good
good.
stuff.
Who would have believed that a bunch of local Cowboys
And that'll
could
keep you at
become
1
such
under for the
accomplished
round.
putters in
And you are
such a short
1 under
amount
for
of
the
time?
tournament.
As I observed, I realized what they were
Third
doing
hole coming
actually
up.
made much more
Take your best
sense
shot.
than my two-handed traditional style. Golf is one of the few sports where we don't look at the target while performing. We play to a memory. But these guys were looking right at the hole while putting. It seemed to me that a true picture was more powerful than a memory. Not only that, I reasoned that looking with both eyes, binocular vision was superior to my side-on method, where my eyes were not the same distance to the hole. Their putter faces were plenty big and face-balanced, allowing them to putt
No
comfortably
good.
while
Pretty
looking at
deep
the hole.
stuff here.
I also noticed
give
how
it a good
freely
hack.
their shoulder
Let's put
joint
it in the right
moved.
direction.
Their putting arm hung freely from the shoulder, allowing them to grip the putter between the thumb and other fingers, the same way a violinist would hold a bow or an artist a brush. And freedom is the key to putting. Because their left hand anchored the top of the putter, they putted with one hand, focusing all of the feel in the tips of the fingers, the place in the body where the sensory system congregates. Their left arms were anchored against their chest at a 45-degree angle, with the left hand placed just in front of their right shoulder joint. The arm anchored in this fashion allowed for a perfect hinge. Before the game began, I had a sense that I was the pigeon once again, about to be taken for more money. The game was explained to me through great interruptions and trash talking. It was the same as before. We would putt to holes of 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, and 40 feet. Each person had 5 balls each time and could putt to any of the
Looks
holes
like
he
you're
chose.
going to hit some sand here.
Each make paid the same as before. Only makes counted. I had never witnessed so many made putts in my life. These guys were all good. I was most impressed by their distance control. The feel from washers transferred to the green. Looking at the hole seemed to give them a more direct access to feel. When their putts failed to go in, they just missed slightly to the left or right. What remained were tap-ins. In a real game of golf, this would essentially eliminate the 3-putt. During one of my turns, I was challenged to use the face-on style. They said if I
Looking
would,
good.
they would double my fee for makes. I was in the thick of the race for the money, so this was a ploy to distract me, I was
38
sure.
feet separates
But it
you
was also a chance
and the
to be
hole.
a hero and to try
I hope
something
you
new.
hope you have fun with this.
I accepted their challenge, and without practice, immediately made 2 from 5 feet, then 1 from 10. I then chose the 30-foot putt for my last 2 putts. The first missed, but the second one dropped, as did the mouths of the cowboys. I collected my money, which more than made up for my deficit for the day, then quietly stepped to the side of the green at the prompting of Johnny. 4 out of 5 ain't bad, he said. Think you could have done that with your side-on style? I was speechless because of the ease of the method. As I thought back to the putts, one thing really stuck out. It was simple. That was amazing, wasn't it? I replied. You know, I didn't have
Sitting
one technical
at 1
thought
over
in my
for the
head.
round.
I just
And you're
looked
1
and
over
let my
for
arm
the
swing.
tournament.
Think you would ever use that in a tournament, he asked.
Okay, let's send this little
I
ball
wanted
on
to
its
say
way.
yes, but I feared change, especially one that was different. I was one of those who grew up respecting tradition, especially the deep traditions of golf. I knew putting wasn't my strong point, but I had practiced for years to get to my current level. My mind was racing. Quitting now would regulate all that practice to waste, wouldn't it? Surely today was a fluke. It couldn't be that easy, could it? This was utopia. What about the real world of competition? And even if it did work, what would people think? I would be laughed at, gawped
So
at,
we have about
and never taken
165
seriously.
yards to go still.
I would be consumed with self-consciousness. I could only imagine the doubt that would hound each missed putt. The truth was that I was comfortable with what I had. Comfort zones are just that, comfortable. And so is tradition. It is safe, a great place to hide, but it is also the enemy of innovation and the destroyer of new thought. It can hold back the wisdom of creativity and squelch the dreams of man, and in the long run, it could conceivably steal talent. Johnny could sense that he had just struck a nerve. Being a perceptive teacher, he knew that this was a teachable moment. So he walked over to the cowboys who were engrossed in their game. "Hey, guys, we're done," he said, winking at them to let them know that they had done their job
Great
well.
contact. Nice
"We're
swing.
going to take a walk." They seemed happy, knowing that they could have lost their shirts if I had continued to putt with this unearthed potential. In silence, we began our walk. As
All
we
right,
headed down
14
the trail
feet to the
leading
hole.
to the river, Johnny paused, as he often did before sharing a piece of wisdom, and pulled a piece of long-stem grass to chew on. "I think I know," he started. "I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I think I know." "Know what?" I asked. "I know how putting technique got derailed. It had to have started from day one. You see, the object of the game was to hit the ball far, and to hit it towards a target. To hit the ball with any force, old Tom Morris had to approach the ball side on so he could create torque. It takes torque to hit the ball with velocity."
Okay, so that'll keep you
I nodded
at
in
1
agreement.
over for the round.
Johnny
And 1
continued.
over for the
They
tournament.
got so into hitting the ball across the fields that
Coming
they
off
stayed
a
in the same
par on the
position
last
once
one.
they
Let's
approached
see what
the
happens
hole.
here.
They no longer needed torque. Yet they were used to approaching the ball side on, so they continued in that manner. Johnny reached in his pocket and handed me his keys. He then backed away about 10 feet and asked me to toss the keys to his outstretched hand. Instinctively, I turned my body towards his hand and face on, looking at his
This one's
hand,
looking
tossed the
good.
keys underhanded, hitting the mark. "There is a gold mine of truth in what you just did," he said as he returned the keys to his pocket.
Putting from around
"Since you didn't
16
need
feet
torque,
out.
you tossed the keys face on. And instead of looking at the keys, you looked at the target." "Here's the point," he emphasized. "If putting had been invented before the game of golf, I believe people would have approached it just like the free throw, darts, or bowling." He mimicked each task as he spoke. "They would have come at it face on, using the full power of binocular vision, as well as a free shoulder joint that swings in a straight line. Secondly, I think they would have created a putter head large enough that they wouldn't have to look at the ball while putting. Today's oversized
And
putters
that'll
allow
keep
this
you
to
at
happen."
1 over for the round.
Upon reaching the
And you're
river,
1
we each
over
took a seat
for the
on a
tournament.
large rock a few feet from the water's edge.
Okay, let's give her.
This was the same place that I had learned to fly fish just a few days before. Johnny continued his physics lesson. "No one would shoot a free throw side on. The body just doesn't work well from that angle. The shoulder joint would cause the arm to move in a circle rather than a straight line. In golf, the swing moves in a circle from the side-on approach. That is why timing is so
Solid
critical.
swing.
It's no different in traditional side-on putting. Unless you manipulate your arms dramatically, there is no way to take the putter head back and through on a perfect line.
Looking
However,
at
when you approach from a
125
face-on
yards
position,
ish
the shoulder
to the pin
joint
here.
hangs in such a way that a straight back and through motion is natural and free. I also believe the eyes are critical in this equation," he spoke as he tossed a rock toward a stump of the river. "Looking at the target has to be better than hitting to a memory, and binocular vision has to be superior to side-on vision. Finally," he added as he picked up a small stick about the size of a paintbrush, holding it in his hand as if he were about to paint, "nothing of great feel is done without the tip of the index finger leading the way.
All right,
An
let's get out of
artist,
this roughing
a
out of the
surgeon,
grain
a
here.
violinist, they all use the index finger to lead the way. When we point, taste, tie, sew, or write, we engage the index finger. Furthermore, we seldom use both hands when precision is needed. We focus our feel to one hand and to the index finger specifically, with the thumb adding stability." He looked at me with a sense of knowing in his voice, and with a confidence that came from years of golf instruction and the wisdom gained from working the land, he simply said, "This is the future of putting. In this case, tradition has sold us short, and everyone, it seems, is captive.
Okay,
His
so
gaze
that'll keep
continued
you
looking
at
straight at
1
me,
over for the
staring
round.
all the way to my
And
heart
1
as if
over
he saw
for the
something in
tournament.
me I'd never seen. Someone is
All
going
right,
to lead the
let's
revolution.
let her rip.
It just might be you. Johnny stood up, holding a flat rock in his hand. I couldn't help but notice that he held it between his thumb and index finger. He stood with the sun behind him, casting rays of light from around his head as he skipped the rock across the water. Who would have thought a rock could skip, or metal float, or a plane fly, he pondered. He turned to me. Is it tradition you seek, or truth? He asked.
This one's
Is it
looking dialed
excellence or
in.
acceptance? He challenged. These are the questions of greatness. These are the questions that must be
And we're
answered
putting
if
from
a man
about
is
28
going to
feet out.
lead a revolution. Johnny headed up the trail. I'll see you at the driving range at 8 tomorrow, he called back over his shoulder as he disappeared around the bend, leaving a potential revolutionary contemplating his future. Chapter 7. Pilot's Checklist. On Friday, the 5th day of my journey, I met Johnny at the driving range. He had told me that today would be focused on specialty shots. I was looking forward to what he had up his sleeve. I knew it would be creative. I just hadn't prepared for how creative it was to be. Johnny drove up in his pickup. Windows rolled down with the faint sounds of
9-footer
country and
here.
western music
I
escaping
think you
from
can
the
do
cab.
this.
He motioned for me to join him, so I jumped in the passenger side. Before we hit any balls, I want to take you for a ride, he said, as we headed toward the back of his ranch, far from the golf course. The ranch was quite large, about 1,000 acres, and the roads were too bumpy to be in a hurry. Maybe the pace of life is
That'll work
relative
for
to the
par.
roads we choose to drive, whereas good roads may quicken our
And that'll
step
keep
to
you
our
at
next
1 over
destination.
for the round.
Gandhi once
And
said,
you're 1
there
over
is more to
for the
life
tournament.
than increasing its speed. Out
Coming
here, the
off
Cowboys
a par
moved to
on
the
the
pace
last one.
life
Let's
gave
see what
them.
happens here.
This week had been a time for recalibrating my internal metronome to that of the Cowboys. Well, what have you learned so far, he asked as we killed time along the way. Thinking back over the days, I began to pull together the pieces. I've learned the importance of conviction in my method. My first day of reflection and riding under the oak tree made me see that. I have learned that rhythm, balance, and patience define my game. Fly fishing revealed my emotional tendencies and taught me how to take control rather than being controlled.
Looks like you'll
I've
be in
learned
the
about
short
the art of
stuff
the game
here.
and how important it is to take the time to picture a masterpiece. And yesterday, I learned that truth is more important than tradition.
And
I guess
about
those are the things that
135
stand
yards
out.
out from here.
My thoughts about the game have really been altered. I can't wait to try them out on the course. Well, if today goes well, we'll head to the course tomorrow, he said. But today is the critical piece of the puzzle. What are we going to do way back here in the middle of nowhere? I asked quizzically. You'll see soon enough, he responded. How about helping me with this gate? The truck came to a stop at a big red wooden gate. I jumped out and opened it while Johnny drove through. I got back in the truck, and we pulled into a cleared, level section of land. It was obvious that this
Good
long,
stuff.
narrow strip of
Okay,
grassland
we're
had
about
been
17
cleared
feet
very
out here.
purposefully. We drove down the middle of the field in the ankle-high grass. It was fairly smooth, revealing that all the rocks had been removed. At the opposite end of this quarter-mile clearing stood a barn-looking structure with an old-fashioned windsock atop the roof. Johnny pulled up to the side of the building and killed the engine. "Watch out for snakes," he said with a smile on his face. "They like to hang out in the shade of the hangar." He swung open one of the two side-by-side barn doors. Inside sat a 1970s model Cessna 172 airplane. I opened the other door, and together we pulled out the plane. When I said we were going for a ride, this is what I meant, he said
Okay,
with
so
a
that'll
wry,
keep you at
up-to-no-good
1
smile
over
on
for
his
the round.
face. You have
1
any
over
objection
for
to
the
going up
tournament.
for a spin? Before I could answer,
Okay,
he
it's
motioned
time
for
to
me
send
to
this
join him
ball
as
on
he
its
walked
way.
around the plane carefully, completing an external flight check. Constantly the teacher, Johnny said that the most important part of safe flying comes from disciplined flight checks. By discipline and by the law, you must conduct both an external and internal flight check, leaving nothing to chance, he said, seeming to have a deeper purpose in his exhortation. Once he had checked the engine oil and fuel level and kicked the tires for good measure, we climbed into the cramped cockpit.
Well, this is
I
in the
love being
inner
in the plane.
sanctum of
Just
the
as I
rough here.
dream
This
of
is
being
deep
a
down
fly
in. You're
fisherman,
going to have to
I
handle
had
this with
once
care.
longed to be a pilot. but golf had stolen this and most of my other dreams along the way. The instruments and gadgets were fascinating as well as intimidating to a first-time co-pilot. Johnny opened up his window and yelled, "Clear!" as if there were anyone within miles of us. It was obvious that this man was serious about process. He then pressed the starter, and the engine fired up with an initial puff of smoke, shaking and vibrating the little plane. Johnny put on his Ray-Bans and handed me a clipboard. He asked me to read the Cessna checklist out loud, one item at a time.
Well, looks like this
Once he
may
had
be in the
addressed
deep
the command,
stuff.
he said, "Check." There were no shortcuts to this process. Johnny was as serious as I had seen him as he attended to this checklist. He could tell this was the foundation of the flight for him. He simply was not going to engage the flight until the foundations were set. We taxied out to the end of the level clearing, what I now understood to be the runway. Johnny looked at me and said, "We have to hit a specialty shot on a runway like this. It's a short field with a lot of grass, so we need to get the plane up as quickly as possible. Kind of like a flop shot in golf. Let's give full flaps. Pull hard on the steering column and give it full throttle, getting the front wheel
Okay,
off
here we
as
go.
quickly
This one
as possible."
to save par.
You like that idea? Acting like I had a clue, I said, "Roger." Johnny pointed toward the tattered pink windsock with a concerned look. "The wind in our face is our helper, but it is quartering from the left. This will be tricky with the short field tactic. With all the wind we will be forcing under the wings, the plane will want to blow off the runway to the right. We'll have to be assertive and focused." And with that vote of confidence, he gave full throttle while standing on the brakes, wanting every bit of momentum in our favor once we initiated takeoff. The noise was deafening at first. He let off the brakes, and with a jolt we rattled down the runway. Johnny pulled hard on the steering column. We bumped along, picking up speed. The front wheel lifted, and it felt like we were pulling a wheelie down the runway. Johnny was looking out the side window now, since the front window was pointed straight upward. I could feel the wind buffet us to the right while Johnny fought it back on course with a hard left rudder in a way that was calm yet aggressive. Finally, the plane lifted. The wind quickly pushed the plane right. Johnny pushed the left rudder a little more, turned the steering column slightly left. We climbed out parallel to the runway. Though from the ground, it looked like we were dog walking.
Sitting at
What
2
a
over
sight
for the
to see.
round. And
Sabinal
2
River
over
snaked through the
for
valley,
the tournament.
cutting a swath through the majestic red cypress
Let's
that
put this
defined the
ball
river.
down in the
The
fairway.
hills rolled on for miles. The colorful native wildflowers dotted the landscape. I could see entire fields of bluebonnets, spring's gift to the pastures of Texas. It was as though I was riding shotgun with Robert Redford in the movie Out of Africa as he flew his biplane above the Serengeti. The sweeping rhythm of the movie's soundtrack was playing in my mind. After a while, Johnny's voice interrupted my movie
Nice
scene.
swing.
"To fly," he said, "is to focus. You start with an external walk-around checklist, ending with a look at the engine. Second, you enter the cockpit and go through the internal
And it looks
pre-flight
like we have about
checklist. These
135
two
yards or
checklists
so to go.
guarantee that the plane is airworthy. Confidence builds for the flight as you eliminate possible problems before you get airborne. Finally, you check the wind, plan a strategy, and focus. After all of that preparation, it is time to perform. With an assertive mindset and a calm heart and
Nice.
steady hand, you initiate the plan. At that point, it's all feel. You move with the wind and bumps. You simply must feel. He paused a moment to let the idea sink in, and then he finished. It's a whole lot like golf. In fact, it is identical to golf. He climbed to 2,000 feet. "Would you like a flying lesson?" he asked. Before I could answer, he told me how he had learned to fly. After we moved to Utopia, I started flying. I got into it so much several years ago that I got certified as an instructor. I taught both my girls how to fly. I've taught a cowboy or two how to fly, including a few rodeo cowboys. They like to go up on hot summer days because it's like riding a bull when the plane is buffeted by all the heat currents. Now I knew I was in
And that'll
Utopia.
keep you
This
at
was too
2
good to
over
be
for the
true.
round.
Would I like a
And
lesson?
2 over for the
I
tournament.
said almost in disbelief. I have
All right,
dreamed
let's
about
haul
this
off
my entire
and
life.
just
Your
smash
feet
this next
control
drive.
direction with the rudder. The steering column controls the wings and pitch, he began. To turn, push one foot and turn the steering column in that direction. To go up or down, push or pull. Have fun. Over the next hour, I became familiar with the controls and felt as though I could fly if I needed to. Johnny, as usual, provided encouraging advice and made me feel like a Blue Angels pilot. And then the fun came to a
Now that was a
screeching
swing.
halt. We were at about 2,000 feet when Johnny reached down and turned off the engine. Everything went silent. "Okay, we have an emergency," he yelled.
And we
"We have
have
to put the
about,
plane down somewhere.
I'd say
There is
140-ish
no time to
yards
get to the
from here.
runway. Keep the nose down. Keep the wings level." "Where are you going to put the plane down?" he asked with great urgency. I had signed on for flying lessons, but found out quickly I was getting crashing lessons instead. "What about the highway?" I said with a panicked voice. "You can't land a plane on a road. There are cars and trucks and power lines. Get to a field," he said. "Keep the nose down, keep the wings level, and
Solid
stay calm."
swing.
"What about that field?" I asked, hoping that I had made a good choice. "You see those specks on the ground? Those are cows and goats. You can't land on cows. Find another field and hurry. We are losing altitude fast," he exclaimed.
1 over for the round.
All of a sudden,
And you're
the stall
1 over
warning went off
for the
and the
tournament.
plane began to buffet. "Get the nose down," he said as he
Nice
helped me
bird
shove
on
the
that
steering
last
column
hole. Let's see
forward
another one.
until we were staring almost straight down. There in front of us was a field full of crops. We were at 1,000 feet by now. "How about that field? There are no cows that I can see," I said, almost begging. "That's a good field. It's a cornfield. Are you going to land with the rows or against the rows?" he asked, looking right at me. I was thinking to myself, what the heck kind of question
Someone's
is
going to need
that?
to bite.
Seeing my incredulous, he said, "We have to land with the rows. If you land against the rows, the plane will flip." We headed toward the field at a steep incline. Until now, Johnny had left me in complete control. At 500 feet, he said, "Well, what do you know? The key has been turned off." He turned the key and started the engine. It started right up, as if this were a common occurrence on a flight with Johnny. He grabbed the controls and ascended to 2,000 feet. He looked right at me and said, "Son?" "Yes, sir," I replied, my heart still racing and sweat beating across my forehead. "As your flight instructor, by law, I could never sign you off to solo a plane or take passengers up with you until you were ready for an emergency. To fly a plane with confidence is to know you are prepared for any challenge, any emergency. Up here is serious business. If you were my student, we would practice every conceivable emergency for a minimum of 40 hours in the air before I would let you put your life on the line. Do you understand?"
And
I had
that'll
never
keep
thought
you
of
at
it that
1
way.
over for the
Flying
round.
would never be enjoyable
1
unless
over
you
for
had
the
supreme
tournament.
confidence that you could solve a crisis in the air.
All right, next stop. Let's
Johnny spoke
let's
with
hope
great
it's a
authority
fairway.
as he shifted his focus to my golf game. "At your level of play in golf, it is no different. As your teacher, I will never sign you off to play in a tournament until I know that you are prepared for the emergencies. And that's what today is all about." I sat in silence. Johnny knew that silence was a great teacher. As I stared out at the lush and beautiful landscape, I began to understand a new
Great
truth.
contact. Nice
I knew
swing.
for certain that I had never been properly prepared for tournament play. I had always played with fear, the fear of what if. And every round was composed of a number of what ifs. That was the nature of the game.
Looking at around
As we headed
155
back to the
yards out
runway,
from here.
we could tell that the wind had picked up a bit. We circled the field and saw the windsock had shifted even more from the left, blowing almost perpendicular to the runway. "This will be tricky, but I believe we can do it," he said. We approached the runway with half flaps instead of full because of the crosswind. The plane was aimed left of the runway, yet the wind effect kept us
Great
perfectly
contact.
centered for the approach. Everything was going smoothly until just before touchdown. As Johnny was pulling back on the throttle and holding the nose off the ground, we were hit from the left
Looking
by
at a
gust.
19-foot putt
The
from
right
here.
wing went low. The plane was blown off course, and in a split second, we were in an emergency situation with the tip of the wing dangerously close to the ground. In a blur, Johnny gave the engine full power, leveled the wings, and turned into the wind. Immediately he was in control, climbing the plane out for a go-around. It appeared that this was second nature for him. Had I been a pilot, I'm sure we would have crashed. We went around and came in with no flaps, slipping the plane down at a steeper angle. This time we hit the ground without incident. The nose quickly pushed forward and the brakes quickly applied. We taxied in with plenty of room to spare. Johnny had a
Okay,
now
so that'll keep
familiar
you
look on his
at
face,
1 over for
one
the
that meant
round.
he was about
And
to
you're 1
share
over
a
for the
profound
tournament.
point. Many years ago, my flight instructor
Okay,
turned
here we
off the engine
go.
during my first flight as well. He also told me the same thing that I told you today. And it's times like this that I am eternally grateful. I knew exactly what I would do when I was hit by a crosswind during a landing. That is why we are sitting here now instead of in a heap of ashes. We went through a shutdown checklist and killed the engine. Johnny's expression had changed, and he had urgency in his voice as he spoke. As we pushed the plane back into the hangar, he said,
Nice.
"Confidence is supreme in this game. Confidence comes from being prepared for an emergency." We jumped into the pickup and headed back to the range. My mind was flooded with new thought. Intense
Looks like,
experiences do that to a person.
I'd say around
I knew the
110
importance
yards or
of
so to the
preparation.
pin.
Shoot, I grew up with a Hogan mystique. I thought I could out-practice anyone. I loved to hit balls. I could spend hours on the range in the blistering Texas sun, thinking I was in paradise. I had memorized John Wooden's famous quote, "Failing to prepare meant preparing to fail." Inside, I finally
Solid
began
swing.
to see that game day was about preparation, not only for the swing, but for the environment ripe with emergencies. I had a new template,
Nice,
a new
nice. You're
perspective,
on.
and I
This
knew
one's
that
for
I had
birdie.
failed to completely prepare in the past. I had not had the mindset of preparing for the emergencies. Back at the range, Johnny spent the remainder of the day connecting the dots between flying and golfing. Practicing for the emergencies meant an overhaul in my understanding of preparation. Johnny explained that golf is the worst practice sport in existence. He helped me understand that hitting balls from a perfectly level lie on nicely manicured grass, one ball after another with the same club to the same target with no ramifications, is not golf.
Okay,
He said
that takes
that
you
in all other
down to
sports,
even par.
scrimmaging
Nice.
was the best form of
And
practice.
you are even
In
par
golf,
for the
that
tournament.
meant getting on the course or creating a setting
15th
with
hole coming
course-like
up.
lies and obstacles. Before we hit a shot, we need to develop a pilot's checklist for tournament play. Earlier today, the checklist gave us confidence that the plane was airworthy, and the emergency checklist helped me avert a crash. I want you to listen to me carefully. Your pre-shot checklist will become the most valuable asset in tournament play. It will be your foundation. From this
Beauty.
day forward, you simply cannot afford to hit a shot without a commitment to your pre-shot routine. It will become your security
Okay, you're
system.
on, and you got
Going through
some
the
real estate to
pre-flight
cover
earlier
with
today
this
gave me
next one.
complete confidence that the plane was airworthy. When it was time to take off, I was able to focus my attention on the feel of the takeoff, handling the crosswind and currents with the movements of my feet and hands. Takeoff is an art. The conditions are never the same, and the pilot must be free to feel and respond to the conditions. Johnny continued, "In golf, there are 5 major checkpoints leading to the club head's initial move off the ball. First is the observation check. This includes such things as the wind, lie of the ball, elevation change, distance, and obstacles. If a
And
player
with
misses
that,
any of
you
these,
will
the
stay at
shot
even
is
par.
already compromised.
And you are even
Second
for
is
the
the
tournament.
strategy check. This includes choosing the
16th
target,
hole
club,
coming
and
up.
type of shot. If a player misses any of these, the shot is compromised. These 2 checks are similar to the external and internal flight checks we did this morning that guaranteed that the plane was airworthy. In golf, the decisions have been made by this point. It is time for athleticism to take over. A couple of days ago, we defined this next stage as art. Art has 3 components. Remember? He finished. Remembering back to the shot from beneath the great oak, I responded,
It's looking good.
"See, feel, and trust." "Precisely," he agreed. "This is not only your takeoff mindset, it is also your response to emergencies. In the plane, the overarching emergency response is always to level the wings, give full power, and turn into the wind. In golf, it is to see your shot, feel the shot, and trust it. While this doesn't guarantee success, it gives you the highest probability to reach your fullest potential. And that, my friend, is all we can ask of ourselves. Before each shot, you will go through this routine. Your response to any emergency, such as a poor shot, bad lie, bad break, or any other distraction, is to move your focus to your checklist. Your checklist is your
Pretty
security
deep
system.
rough here.
We started
Not
at the
going to
range with the
sugarcoat
9
it.
basic shots in golf. Low hook, normal hook, high hook, low straight, normal straight, high straight, low slice, normal slice, high slice. Johnny lined up 9 balls that called the shot. I had 5 seconds to pull it off. In 5 seconds, I had just enough time to see, feel, and trust. We did this for the better part of 2 hours. In the beginning, I
Heading
was just saying
towards
the
the
words,
water.
but as Johnny coached, I began to live the words. I would see the shot. I would deeply feel the shot, and I would trust or let go. The feeling was amazing the first time I really lived each word. When I said, "See it," I remembered the painting from behind the big oak and could see the shape and trajectory. When I said, "Feel it," my mind clicked into the words that defined my fly fishing method on day 2. Rhythm, balance, and patience moved from my head out through my body. When I said "trust it," I signed the masterpiece. I knew that I would never go back, and that I had just learned the true secret of the game. How simple, yet how profound. I understood for the first time how all the pieces of Johnny's unorthodox teaching were coming together. It was brilliant. For specialty shots, Johnny believed you should never change the swing. Instead, he advocated adjusting ball position, stance, and opening or closing the club face as the most efficient and effective ways to success. He taught me that manipulating the ball with these pre-swing adjustments was much easier than attempting a different swing for each of the 9 shots. These adjustments, he said, would free me up to always have the same swing, rhythm, and thought process during the swing. He would not allow overs. If I missed the shot, we moved on, just like golf. We moved to an area he had designed near the range and practiced the 5 basic lies.
2 over for
Flat,
the round.
uphill,
And 2
downhill,
over for
ball
the
above
tournament.
my feet, ball below my feet. He kept me moving between them,
Okay, 17th
never
hole.
allowing me to
Take
be
your
lulled
best
into rote
shot.
memory practice. He kept my mind moving and challenged my creativity on each shot. Eventually, I had each of the 9 basic shots from each of the 5 basic lies, and each time I was committed to the see it, feel it, trust it routine. We then moved to the rough and practiced bear lies,
Solid
normal
swing.
lies, shallow lies, and deep lies. We experimented with each club, with each lie, to see how it would react. I took notes so that I would have a better understanding of strategy from the rough. The most revealing shot from the rough was with the metal woods and hybrids. They seemed to part the grass with ease. Johnny showed how opening the face with a 7 or 5 wood produced an array of shots that would serve me well. Every once in a while, Johnny would throw a tree in the way. I had to hit under and around both ways and over the top, experimenting with various clubs until I understood where my
Looking
odds
good.
were. We practiced various lies around the green next, and I was amazed once again at the versatility of the
Okay,
utility
20
woods
feet
around
to
the green
the cup.
from the rough. They were literally choke-proof because of their ability to part rather than catch the grass. As the day ended, I felt like Chuck Yeager, the great test pilot. I hit more types of shots on this day than any other day in my life. I had hit each of these shots with a see it, feel it, trust it checklist. I learned a tremendous lesson. In practicing for the emergencies of the game, my confidence grew. I felt more prepared for the real game of golf than any previous day of practice in my life.
Okay,
The day
so
of
that'll
practice
keep you
ended
at
with Johnny
2
saying,
over for the
"Now
round.
I will sign you
And
off
2
to
over
solo
for the
the
tournament.
plane." I knew what he meant.
Hole number
I was ready
18.
for the emergencies of tournament golf. He pulled out his pocket knife and cut off the back of my shirt. This, I learned, was standard procedure for every pilot that solos for the first time. But I felt sure they weren't wearing an expensive golf shirt at the time. Chapter 8. Hickory Sticks. On day 6, I drove down the one-lane entrance to the links that had become so familiar this life-altering week. It was a windows-down
Okay,
sort
you're
of
kind of
road.
in some
You
deep
wanted to
stuff. This is the
experience
danger
it,
zone.
not just drive it. Unlike the entrances to the modern-day master-planned communities and country clubs, this stretch of road was flanked by the authenticity of life. Nothing was imported. Without the help of a gardener, native wildflowers bloomed in concert with the natural grasses and vines. Sensing their short-lived splendor, wildflowers spring to life with a flurry and lived life greatly, knowing the slower-going grasses would survive them in the coming heat. Cattle stared you down with
Could be in the rough
curiosity
here.
while chewing their cud, oblivious to the world outside of
Sweet.
their fence.
All right, we're
The
right around
century-old rusted
125
barbed wire
yards out.
fence served its purpose faithfully, held together by the stoic rock-proof cedar post born in the valley. Obsessed by failure earlier in the week, I had been too preoccupied to experience life beyond the surface, missing what Monet lived to paint. The lane
Great
eventually gave way
contact.
to the
Nice swing.
pothole-laden parking lot shared by both the cemetery and golf course. I imagine the lot occasionally served both patrons,
And you're on the
grieving the loss
green
of
with
a loved
a
one,
very
and
long
those
putt in
bereaved
your
over
future.
failing once again to close the deal on the inward nine. I could attest that the line sometimes blurs between three-putting the 18th and losing a distant relative. The game had an insidious way of clouding a man's perspective. As I stepped out of the car, the smell of freshly mown Bermuda grass hung heavily in the air. This sweet fragrance brought thousands of memories to mind. The smell is intoxicating to all who play the game, an opiate accompanied by eternal hope. Each time a golfer steps to the first tee surrounded by this tantalizing fragrance, he stands at even par. We all own par on the first tee. Hope
All right,
is
3 over
eternal.
par for your round
It's on the
today.
18th green that one
Thanks
has
a
to